Thank you for tuning in. I am your host Dave, doing a quick tutorial review for the white student transmission. And today we're actually going to review a piece of Marxist literature, or weaponized literature as I like to call it. Before we get into it, something I'd like to point out is that when we review the Marxism or social engineering that happens inside of our schools, it's pretty much open season. And it's really just about using different forms of manipulation or deception techniques on the population and seeing what you can get away with or seeing what you can get them to normalize. If you get enough people to normalize that and to go along with it, then you've pretty much locked in that social change that you attempted to do. So I'm going to kind of show you a little bit about how that works. My school posted this to the school's website, and what I noticed was that a lot of schools have this. So I thought that this particular piece of literature would be a good example for today's tutorial. It's through their Safe Zone, and it's called a People of Color Checklist. So you know how schools have different academic lanes for specialty or splinter groups. So this is that one channel that this particular piece of literature comes through. And on this piece of literature, you're going to notice that we have multiple different groups listed. So you have African Americans, Asian Americans, Latino Americans, Middle Eastern Americans, and so on. So what I've done is I've actually taken out all the groups and I've put them over here on this chart for the analysis. And one thing I wanted to start with was I noticed that when they went over this, immediately in the intro, it says, the majority of information available has come from research studies that focused on white participants. So for me, immediately when I see the term white now, it's a stopping point for me because I want to know, okay, what context are they using this in? Are they referring to people by their race or are they referring to people by their color? So just to give you a quick breakdown, if you refer to people in the context of color, you have four groups because you're basically referring to people by what color they are, their visual appearance or their hue, right? So you've got white people, brown people, black people, yellow people, and you look at them and you can tell just based on visual appearance. So that's one context. Another context the term white is used in is in the context of race. Now, in America, the term white is actually an umbrella term, and you've got multiple subgroups below that. You've got Middle Eastern folks here. That would be your Arabs, Pakis, whatnot. You then have Hispanic and Latino categories here. You have the European or white ethnic population, as I call them. And then you have the ethnically Jewish population. For those of you who didn't know, the Jewish identity is both ethno-religious, meaning it's not just a religion, it's also an ethnicity. So it is included under this umbrella term. But back to this piece of literature. So I'm here, I see the term white, and I said, okay, is this race or is this color? Well, I look over here at the different groups listed, and I already see Latinos are listed, Middle Eastern people are listed, and I know that they're already in this same racial bucket here. So I know that if this were being used in the context of race, it would already include them. They wouldn't be listed separately or outside of that. They wouldn't be able to use this to differentiate themselves. So this for me confirms that this is not being used in the context of race because they're out here, they're listed separately. So this is actually being used in the context of color. So here, let's stop and point out really quick. This is called a people of color checklist. The only people being referred to by their color is this group here. None of these people are being referred to by their color. If they were, this would be called brown people. This would be called yellow people. This would be called black people. That's the way you refer to people when you refer to them by their color. So there's that first linguistic switch over there I want you to pay attention to. Separately, what I noticed is that everybody is being called American except the originator of the American identity. The white population is the population that created the American identity and intended to use it as an identifier of their culture, their ethnicity, and their heritage. So another thing this checklist has done is it's used the American identity in an inside-out way, transferring it away from that population. And what happens is if you change or reword the literature this way, and little kids from a young age, they grow up learning, okay, I'll use the American identity to refer to them. So these will be the Americans, but not them. And after a generation or after these people grow up, they'll grow up saying, no, we were always taught that we were the Americans, not these people. They've never been called American. We've just called them by their color instead. So the population that has originated the American identity and intended for it to be used as their cultural identifier has now been displaced of their own identity within their own society. So this actually leads to the displacement of that population. Um, so the inversion of the American identity, this is something that is done on purpose. You'll never see this pattern happen in reverse. You'll never see literature worded to call them Americans and not them. So it's the pattern plus the precision equals the proof. 100% of the time, you won't see that. This is being done in other countries. This is being done to the Irish people. This is being done to the Swedish people. This is being done to the French, and so on. And it's coordinated and it's being done on purpose. So if students don't challenge this at the student level, it won't be challenged. Another thing that you want to keep your eye on is this is taught in the classroom, but eventually it kind of seeps out to every other part of society. So now when you're watching the news or reading news articles, you're going to notice they're called American and not them. So as a student, you need to challenge that. You need literature that reinforces your American identity as opposed to literature that was designed to undermine that or strip it away using various deception techniques. So when a teacher puts literature like this in front of you, you can opt out. You can tell them that we don't give our permission or our consent to use our identity in an inside-out way. We don't want to validate it or to normalize it. We don't want it turned inside out, and we don't want it transferred away from us. And what's going to happen is Marxist teachers get really hostile because this is one of the tricks or one of the things that they want to push on you or force you to comply with. So what I successfully did was I went to the dean of my school, the curriculum, the guy who overlooked the curriculum, and I pointed out these patterns, and then I told him, okay, well, go to the pool of literature that's pre-selected for teachers, where they can select, whatever they want to use in their classrooms from, and tell me, what do you have in that pool of literature that refers to my demographic as American? And so they checked and they came back to me and they said, we don't have anything. And I said, okay, well, that's a problem. So it was at that point where I was made aware that they do have forms that you can fill out. You can petition to get other types of literature entered into that pool. So once it's in that pool, other teachers can then select from it and actually use it in the classrooms. Um, and if you're having trouble or if you're having a difficult time, you can also tell them that they need to staff at least one teacher and make one class available for you that does not use this kind of literary structure. We need something that uses literature that reinforces our American cultural identity, not something that takes it away. So the school always has to provide you the option. They can't only have a Marxist teacher. That can't be the only option. Otherwise, they're not providing you the environment that they're supposed to provide you. So students, feel comfortable challenging this when you see it. Feel comfortable pointing out these patterns to your teachers. Any parents listening to this, look over your kids' homework or books that they're using. Confront the school on it and tell them it's not acceptable. It's not something that we're going to allow you to normalize, and create this huge problem for our next generation down the road of being displaced of their own identity. That's not acceptable. So try this out. I hope these talking points help. Reply with the responses you get, and if you have any issues, maybe it's something I can help you with. So until next time.